Now, my friends, it's time to talk about the books that I have loved and can't stop thinking about from 2025. It has been an amazing reading year for me, with a lot of fantasy, romantasy, and some sci-fi and crime. And we will go through all of my favorites, so maybe you can find something that you should pick up next. It's kind of funny because when I looked at the list of the books that I have finished this year, I thought that it wasn't that much. When you put them together like this, you can clearly see that I've read some quite chunky books this year, and I have loved it. I've been so immersed in worlds and followed characters for a really long time, and it has been so much fun. So let's go through them. And speaking of chunky books, I started this year with these bad boys. This is the third, fourth, and fifth book of the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and I am a huge fan of all his books. This is a series with high fantasy, high stakes, amazing characters, and such a good magic system. One of the best ones I have ever read. I just love how Brandon Sanderson's brain works when it comes to both characters and magic. I loved reading these books, but they are quite long, so I think some parts are really amazing, but it is a bit slower sometimes. But then the ending is always so intense. Since I read them on my tablet, it's a bit of a blur with where which book ends and where the other one starts. But I remember that I really loved the first, the second, and the third one, and also the last one. One thing I think is really unique with these books is that, except from all the things I already mentioned, our main characters are battling with mental health issues, and it makes them very relatable. These books explore topics like depression, other mental health issues, but also how to forge your own path and not doing what's expected of you. And I think that's really interesting to read. I know some people think that Kaladin, our main character in this book, is a bit boring to read because he is kind of depressed, but I thought it was really interesting to see how everything turned out. So if you want a really epic fantasy story, and especially if you have read Mistborn and want to know what to read next in the Cosmere, I can't recommend these enough. The next book is a really interesting one by a Swedish author called Annika Norlin, and I don't have it because I read it on my tablet as well, but it's called The Colony, or Stacken in Swedish. Annika is actually not only an author I really like, she's also an artist that I have loved since I was a teenager. I've been to so many of her shows, know almost all of her songs, and when this book got really popular in Sweden, I knew I had to read it. It's a really unique and atmospheric book, and it's about a woman who is burnt out and depressed. So she decides to quit her job and leave the society to live in her cabin in the northern woods of Sweden. One day when she's out in the woods, she finds a group of people who is acting quite weird. She starts to observe them, but then she realizes that they seem to live completely off the grid, and they seem to have formed their own lives and their own rules. And when she starts talking to them and eventually joins them, both good and bad things start to happen. This book is really like nothing else I've ever read, and the characters stayed with me for so long. It's really interesting, it's quite sad, and it also describes how power can be a really slippery slope in a group of people. This has been the year of romantasy for me, because I have honestly mostly been reading fantasy, some sci-fi, and also crime before. So I heard so many people read this series, and I wasn't that interested, honestly. But when I went on vacation, I thought that this might be a good holiday read, and I'm so glad I did, because I ate this one up. I just think the characters, the love story, the dragons is so much fun to read. And I also really liked Iron Flame and Onyx Storm, even though I agreed that the first book is really the best one of them. So I'm really happy I picked this one up, because this opened up another genre for me, which I have deep dive in during this year. I can't wait for the fourth book, and I'm so happy that Rebecca Yarros is working on it as we speak. And after that, just like everyone else, I went into ACOTAR after reading Fourth Wing, and I loved this series. I agree that this book isn't the best one of them, but I just couldn't put this one and this book down. This is such a beautiful love story. I love all the characters so much, and since I also like a lot of fantasy, this one fit me as well. And speaking of interesting magic worlds, characters that I really love, and an epic love story, I also read the Crescent City series this year. I knew I had to find something else after ACOTAR, and I honestly picked them up because everyone says that you have to read these first before the next ACOTAR book, which isn't released yet, because it's an interconnected universe. But I ended up loving these so much as well, especially this one, which isn't just a fantasy book, it's a crime novel as well. And I know a lot of people are hesitant to read urban fantasy because it's set in a city and they have telephones and they are doing party drugs and so much more. But I actually love that. I've been a huge fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer since I was a teenager, so this fit me so well. In Crescent City, both fae, werewolves, angels, demons, and so many other species are living together, and that makes it so fun and interesting. The world building is quite intense at the beginning, but it's so worth it when you continue reading, and I just love how the love story between our main protagonist Bryce and Hunt develops through this book. I also really enjoyed the rest of this series. I know some people like the second book less. I thought it was good too, and like everyone says, I agree that you have to read this if you continue reading the ACOTAR series. But then I also enjoyed the third book so much. So if you have read the first one, please continue with the other ones as well, because it's so much worth it. And then we have The Will of the Many and the Strength of the Few by James Islington. And I would honestly say that these are also masterpieces, but on the other side of the scale of which kind of fantasy I really enjoy to read. Because these ones are really intense, complex fantasy books with a heavy focus on a really intriguing magic system, and it was also so much fun to read. When I heard that The Strength of the Few was planned, I actually saved The Will of the Many, so I read them back to back, and I don't understand how you other guys could have waited for this sequel, because the ending of this is so intense and you really want to know what's going on. In The Will of the Many, we get to follow our main protagonist Viz, who is adopted by a rich man in the hierarchy, and he forces him to attend to this school, but also to become a spy for him. So that's the premises of the first book, and then things really start to develop from there. Like I said, I really enjoyed reading them, but you have to be very focused to understand what's going on, and it takes a while to get into the world and into the magic system. The magic system is like nothing I've ever read before. They are using will, which is some kind of life force that they can seed to each other. And they also have a system in the society, so the ones who aren't that powerful seeds to the other ones in the next class, and then it works like that in a kind of magical pyramid. So depending on where you are in the hierarchy, you have different amount of will to use. And of course there are some power abuse and some other good stuff in this system. It was really interesting to start to read Will of the Many because I know so many people love this book, so it was almost a bit intimidating, but I really enjoyed it as well. But when I started reading The Strength of the Few, I'm a bit scared to say this, but I almost liked it more, because what you may have picked up from this video, I am a very character-driven person, and I don't know, like Jamie said in the Once Upon a Time podcast, you have to focus so much on what you are reading to understand the world and the magic system and everything else in the first book, that when I started to read the second one, things were already in a place and you could enjoy the story a bit more. It also gets really complicated in this book. This is probably one of the most intricate books I've ever read, and I'm so impressed that James Islington could pull it off and still make it work. It also had a really intense ending, but I think I enjoyed it a bit more because of how everything played out between the characters, honestly. So this was such an amazing reading experience, and if you like complex high fantasy with a touch of sci-fi almost, I think really you should give it a go. Speaking of well-crafted books, I also want to mention this one by Arne Dahl. It's called I cirkelns mitt in Swedish, but it's called Within the Circle in English, and it was released in English last year, so you can check this out even if you don't read in Swedish. I think Arne Dahl is one of our best Swedish authors, and he writes so well done crime novels. It's like an intricate puzzle and you really want to know how next piece fits into the story. The characters are also so good, and I also read the sequel to this and that was amazing as well. So if you want to have a new favorite crime author, I think you should check him out and also check out his other series. But this one was so good. That was all of my favorite books from 2025. And if you look at what's going to be released next year, I think it's going to be an amazing reading year as well. If you don't know what's coming next year, I think you should check this video out, because I go through all the most anticipated releases of fantasy, romantasy and sci-fi. And you don't really want to miss any of them for your next year's TBR.